3 men attacked the Mafia boss, but the waitress had trained for years before this. The harbor and hearth was full. It was always full at 1 in the morning, a pocket of warmth and noise against the cold black rain of Port Azure. The diner sat 3 blocks from the water, and it smelled of old fryer oil, salt, and the sharp metallic tang of the nearby container yards. Rainwater sluiced down the plate glass windows, blurring the blue neon sign into watercolor streaks. Inside, dock workers hunched over coffee, students argued over fries, and a pair of beat cops pretended not to listen. Then the door opened, letting in a gust of wet air and 3 men. They wore long coats, the kind of heavy wool that belonged to another era, dark and dripping onto the checkered linoleum. The fabric was soaked, smelling of the harbor and wet pavement. They did not head for the counter or a booth. They scanned, their movements too coordinated, their right hands not in their pockets, but hooked unnaturally under the coats. Eva Mirek felt the shift before she saw it. Her senses, honed by years she actively worked to forget, registered the drop in temperature, the sudden dead spot in the diner's ambient noise. She was holding a heavy silver tray, loaded with burgers and a chocolate shake. She was just a waitress, lanky and quiet, with short brown hair that never seemed to lay flat. But the calluses on her palms and wrists were not just from hoisting trays or pulling espresso shots. Her eyes, usually downcast and tired, were the eyes of a person who measures distances and counts heartbeats. She continued her path toward booth 4, but angled her body, using the polished silver of the tray to catch the reflection from the glass-walled private room at the back. In the reflection, she saw Gino Belafonte. He was the reason the harbor and hearth was the safest place in Port Azure, a man who owned the legal shipping lanes and, it was rumored, the shadow ones too. He was sitting with the mayor, his suit jacket off, sleeves rolled. He was laughing at something the mayor said, but his eyes were not smiling. Eva's gaze flicked back to the 3 men. She saw their feet. They were not shuffling, not looking for a table. Their steps were balanced, weighted. The predatory tread of a shoot-and-scoot team. They were here to make a mess and leave. In the booth, Gino Belafonte stopped laughing. His instincts, the ones that had kept him alive for 30 years, screamed. He saw the unnatural bulk under the 3rd man's coat, the way his hand was positioned. He saw the glint of polymer framed as the man's hand began to move. But Eva had already seen it. Her brain did not panic. It calculated. The distance from her to the first man was 12 feet. The distance from the man to Gino's booth was 20. She had a window of perhaps 1.5 seconds. She did not throw the tray. She did not scream. As the first man's hand cleared his coat, bringing the flat black outline of a Ghost 19 pistol into view, Eva moved. Her left hand, the one not balancing the tray, was already at her apron. It closed around the small, cheap paring knife she used for cutting lemon wedges. It was not a throw, it was a pass, a high-speed, underhand flick perfected not in a kitchen, but in a place with padded mats and concrete walls. The knife left her hand in a silver blur, traveling flat and true. It did not aim for the chest, it aimed for the hand. The first man's grunt was lost in the sudden clatter of the diner. The knife's 3-inch blade embedded itself perfectly in the webbing of his right hand, severing the abductor pollicis tendon. His hand spasmed open involuntarily. The Ghost 19, his finger not even on the trigger, dropped. It hit the linoleum with a heavy, dead-sounding clack. Then the world exploded. The second man screamed. Freeze, and the sound shattered the diner's spell. Patrons shrieked and dove under tables. A coffee mug hit the floor and burst. Glass from a shattered water pitcher sprayed like ice dust. Eva was already moving. Her tray finally dropped, its contents scattering. She moved low, a fluid crouch, her shoulder checking an elderly woman back into the relative safety of her booth. As the woman fell backward, Eva's leg snapped out, her steel-toed work boot connecting with the leg of a nearby chair, sending it skittering directly into the path of the second gunman. He stumbled, cursing, his own weapon firing once into the ceiling, bringing down a rain of acoustic tile and plaster. The third man, the professional, ignored the chaos. He had one target. He pivoted, raising his weapon not at Gino, but at the bar, the only other exit, the choke point. He was blocking the escape. Eva was closer. She grabbed a sodden, greasy bar towel from a bus tub. As the man leveled his pistol, she snapped the towel, the wet, heavy cotton striking his wrist with the force of a bullwhip. He yelped as the sting hit nerve. Before he could recover, Eva was on him. She wrapped the towel around his gun hand, her other hand coming up, her grip precise. She did not fight his strength. She used the wet fabric for leverage, her thumb finding the safety, clicking it to on. She twisted his wrist inward, breaking his grip, and then pushed. The gun, slick with grease and condensation, shot from his grasp and slid across the floor, coming to rest under the jukebox like a discarded bar of soap. It all took 4 seconds. A shadow descended. Silas Slate Danner, Gino's silver-haired head of security, materialized from the back hallway where he had been watching the mayor's detail. He was not fast, but he was inevitable. He bypassed the third man, who was clutching his stinging wrist, and the second, who was untangling himself from the chair. Slate dropped his full weight onto the first man, the one with the knife in his hand, driving a knee into his spine and securing his one good arm. The diner went from pandemonium to absolute, ringing silence. The only sounds were the rain, the buzz of the broken neon, and the pained breathing of the first attacker. Eva stood breathing hard, the wet towel still gripped in her fist. In the glass booth, the mayor was hiding under the table. Gino Belafonte was not. He stood. Having calmly risen to his feet, he was brushing plaster dust from the shoulders of his expensive shirt. He had not looked at the attackers again after Slate had moved. His eyes, a pale, assessing blue, were locked on Eva. He was not looking at her with gratitude. He was not looking at her with shock. He was looking at her the way he looked at a new shipping manifest, a complex contract, or a rival's weakness with a sudden, intense, and deeply unsettling focus. Eva met his gaze. The warmth of the diner had vanished, replaced by a cold, clinical spotlight. She felt the shift in her own reality, the tearing of the thin, normal life she had tried to build. She had just saved his life, but in doing so, she had shown her hand. She had just crossed a line, and she knew, with chilling certainty, there was no going back. The chaos in the harbor and hearth was mopped up with a terrifying, silent efficiency. The 3 attackers were not arrested, not in the public sense. They were hauled out the back door by men in crisp, dark windbreakers who had materialized from a catering truck parked across the street. The beat cops, looking pale, had been quietly convinced to take their break. The mayor had vanished, whisked away by Slate's detail before the sound of the falling plaster had even faded. The remaining patrons, sensing the shift in authority, filed out into the rain, their bills comped by a manager who looked relieved to still be breathing. Within 5 minutes, the diner was empty except for the staff, Slate, Gino, and Eva. The jukebox was silent. The only sound was the drip of water from the hole in the ceiling. Gino Belafonte pushed the glass door of the private room open with his fingertips. The door hissed on its track. He stepped out from the warm, wood-paneled booth into the harsh blue and red flicker of the diner's neon, which now seemed to paint the room in bruises. He was a man of medium height, but his presence filled the space, drawing all the light and air toward him. He walked past the overturned chair and the slick patch of spilled shake, stopping just 5 feet from Eva. He was still brushing the dust from his shirt sleeves. "Your name," he said. It was not a question. It was a demand, delivered with the quiet energy of a man who had never had to raise his voice. "Eva Mirek." Her own voice was rough, the adrenaline draining away, leaving a metallic taste in her mouth. He tilted his head, tasting the name, Eva Mirek. He pronounced the syllables carefully, as if testing their weight, searching for a history he could not immediately place. His eyes, that pale, assessing blue, flicked from her face to the linoleum where the first attacker's blood was beginning to pool, then to the wall by the bar, where the paring knife was still embedded in the drywall. He pointed at the knife with his chin. That move, the flat spin throw, targeting the flexor tendon, that is not something they teach at the YMCA. Eva forced her hands to unclench. She could still feel the phantom weight of the bar towel. She took a half step back, a tactical retreat, putting more space between them. I saw a threat. I did what was necessary. Gino's lips quirked in a smile that held no warmth. In my world, Miss Mirek, necessary always has a price. The question is, who is paying? He looked at her, truly looked at her, and she felt the weight of his attention like a physical search. He was scanning her for allegiances, for motives, for the telltale signs of a plant. He pulled a phone from his slacks, a slim, dark model that was probably 2 generations ahead of anything on the market. He dialed a single number. It's me. I have a name, Eva Mirek, EVA, MIREK. Yes, Port Azure, Harbor and Hearth. I want the deep file, not the public-facing one. Yes, the one our friends at the Interstate Integrity Bureau keep for us. He paused, listening. I don't care. Wake him up. I want to know where she learned to handle a knife before my coffee gets cold. He hung up without saying goodbye. Eva felt a chill that had nothing to do with the rain. The Interstate Integrity Bureau. She had never heard of it, which meant it was not a real agency. It was his, a private library of secrets, staffed by people who could dig deeper than the law. She knew, instantly, what they would find: nothing. Her file was a carefully constructed void, scrubbed clean years ago, showing only a string of service jobs and no fixed address before Port Azure. A file that clean was, to a man like Gino, a red flag flapping in a hurricane. Silas Slate Danner moved to her side. His presence was like a mountain, solid and quiet. Miss Mirek, you should go home. We'll handle the cleanup. His voice was gravelly but oddly gentle. Eva looked from Slate back to Gino. Gino was already walking toward the exit, shrugging his jacket back on. He stopped at the door, one hand on the chrome push bar, and looked back at her over his shoulder. The neon light carved his profile in half, one side in shadow, one in electric blue. We will talk later, he said. It was not a threat. It was not an offer. It was a simple statement of fact, as inevitable as the tide coming into the harbor. Eva walked home. She did not take a cab or a bus. She walked the 30 blocks to her studio apartment above a closed-down cannery, letting the cold, driving rain wash the smell of cordite and adrenaline from her skin. The 3-mile walk was a ritual, a way to decompress the coiled springs inside her. Her mind replayed the last 30 minutes, but beneath it, older memories surfaced. She remembered the feeling of gravel under her palms as her father, a gruff, kind man who trained port rescue teams, timed her parkour runs along the container walls. Gravity is predictable. Eva, he used to say, people are not always have an exit. She remembered the humid, sweaty smell of the dojo, the painful repetition of joint locks and disarms. And she remembered the one thing she never spoke of: the 6-week, high-intensity executive protection course she had taken in another city. Under another name, a course she had quit halfway through, swearing she would never be that person, that weapon, again. Tonight, that person had saved a man's life. Her studio was small, sparse, and clean. One bed, one sink, one hot plate, a single windows overlooked the dark, churning water of the port. Her first instinct, the one drilled into her by her father, was screaming, "Run!" She had a go bag under her bed with $2,000 in cash, a burner phone, and a fake ID. She could be on a bus to another state, another life, in an hour. She had exposed herself. Gino Belafonte, and whatever shadow world he commanded, would not stop digging until they owned her, or buried her. But a second voice, one she did not recognize, held her fast. It was the question, why here? Why the harbor and hearth? Neutral ground? Why now? When Gino was meeting with the mayor, it was sloppy, it was loud, and the men who had attacked, their movements were good, but they were not elite. They were a message, not an assassination. Her hand rested on the go bag. Run! She looked out the window at the lights of the harbor. Stay. She stayed. She showered, letting the water run scalding hot, and fell into a dreamless, exhausted sleep for 3 hours. At 6:32 in the morning, the knock came. It was not the heavy fist of a tactical team. It was not the impatient rattle of a landlord. It was a polite, measured knock. Rap, rap. Pause. Rap, rap. Eva was already dressed, her work boots laced. She opened the door. Silas Slate Danner stood in the narrow hallway. He was wearing a fresh suit, holding 2 cups of coffee from a bodega down the street. He looked as if he had just had 8 hours of sleep. He offered her one of the cups. Mister, Belafonte would like to see you. Miss Mirek. He asked me to invite you to his offices. Eva looked at the coffee. It was an offering, a gesture of civility, but it was the word invite that settled her decision. A man with Gino Belafonte's power did not need to invite. He could have sent men to drag her from her bed. He could have had the door kicked off its hinges. The polite knock, the coffee, the invitation, they were a demonstration of a different, more subtle kind of power. It was the power of a man who did not need to use force, because he was so confident you would eventually choose to do exactly what he wanted. Eva took the coffee. It was hot, black, and sweet. I'll need my jacket, she said. Slate drove the black sedan himself, a heavy, anonymous car that moved through the morning mist of Port Azure with silent, practiced ease. He did not speak, and Eva did not ask questions. The coffee was good, and the silence was a shared language. He had not taken her cuffs. He had not treated her as a prisoner. He was, she recognized, a professional escorting a fellow professional. The destination was inevitable. Belafonte Imports was not a skyscraper. It was a cathedral of logistics, a massive, converted warehouse on the edge of the working port. The original brick facade had been retrofitted with enormous sheets of smoked glass and structural steel beams, painted a deep ocean gray. It loomed over the water, a fortress disguised as a business. The air smelled of new oak, old brick, and the sharp, briny wind coming off the Atlantic. Inside, the warehouse's cavernous space had been hollowed out. A multi-story office structure, all glass and steel, was built inside the shell, like a ship in a bottle. Walkways and floating staircases connected different levels, and everywhere there was glass. It was a panopticon. Eva felt immediately that there was not a single square inch of this place that was not observed. The small, dark domes of security cameras were tucked into every joint and rafter, their lenses swiveling with a slow, cold, predatory rhythm, like the eyes of sharks, she thought, turning lazily in a tank, waiting for blood in the water. Slate led her to a glass elevator that rose silently through the atrium, offering a view of 100 people already at work, none of whom looked up. They stepped out onto the top floor, a sprawling open space that served as Gino Belafonte's office. It was furnished with minimalist, expensive furniture, but the real decoration was the view, a 30-foot glass wall that overlooked the entire port, the container ships moving like giant, slow-motion toys. Gino was not looking at the view. He was standing at a massive oak desk, wearing a fresh shirt and waistcoat, no tie. He was stirring a tiny cup of espresso. He did not look up when they entered. Slate, thank you. Wait outside, he said. The gravelly-voiced man nodded once, gave Eva a neutral look, and left, the heavy door closing with a sound like a vault. Gino gestured to a leather chair. Eva did not take it. She remained standing. He took a sip of his espresso, then placed the cup down. He slid a thin manila folder across the polished oak. It stopped perfectly, just at the edge of the desk. Eva did not move to take it. Your file, Gino said. Eva Mirek, born in Seattle, left home at 18, a string of waitressing jobs, 2 years in Chicago, 1 in Miami, 6 months in Port Azure. You pay your rent on time. You have no credit cards, no debt, and no driver's license. According to the state, you barely exist." He leaned forward, lacing his fingers. "It is the cleanest file I've ever seen. It's not a file, it's a ghost story. Miss Mirek, someone very good, polished this until it shines. So bright, it hurts my eyes." Eva said nothing. Her pulse was steady. Silence was the only answer to an accusation that was also the truth. Gino smiled, a small, appreciative tick of the lip. "It doesn't matter. I don't care who you were. I care about what I saw. I saw a woman who disarmed 3 trained men not so well trained, perhaps, but trained nonetheless with a paring knife and a bar towel, all while protecting the civilians around her. I am not looking to hire your past." He walked around the desk, stopping a few feet from her, close enough that she could smell the faint, expensive scent of his soap. "I am not hiring you to get your hands dirty," he said, his voice dropping. "I have plenty of men for that. I am hiring you for your eyes, the eyes that saw the attack coming before I did, the eyes that saw the weapon under the coat." He turned and pointed out the window, at the sprawling, complicated web of cranes and ships. "My business is security, logistics, knowing what is on a ship, where it is, and ensuring it gets where it is going, safely. Last night, that security failed. Those men did not just walk in, they had help." He picked up a single plastic card from his desk. "They used a temporary cargo manifest to get past the first gate. It was clean, logged in, and approved. Someone on my side of the wall signed them in." Eva's mind, sharp and clear now, replayed the scene, the men, the noise, the smell. "The second man," she said, her voice quiet. "The one I hit with the chair, his coat. It smelled of heavy-grade machine oil, not car oil, the kind they use for high-torque winches." Gino's eyes sharpened. "Go on?" "It was specific, thick, with a hint of sulfur. You only smell that at berth 7, the old winches, the ones for the deep water repairs." Gino was perfectly still. "Berth 7, he said, the name tasting like acid in his mouth. "Operated by Raven Maritime. Their contract was not renewed. The transition was not amicable." "You think it was them," Eva stated. "I think," Gino said, "that it is too obvious. A blind man could follow that trail, which means someone wants me to." He moved back to his desk, his demeanor shifting. This was the real meeting. "I will not," he said, "pull you into my world. I will not drag you into the mud. I am offering you a job for 72 hours, a consultation. I want you to look at my people, my partners, my security, my most trusted advisors. You are an outsider. You have the eyes. You tell me who is lying. You tell me who has the capacity, the access, and the motive to open the door for those shooters." It was an impossible, ridiculous request, and it was the first honest thing anyone had said to her in months. He was not asking her to be a killer. He was asking her to be a prophet. "I agree," Eva said, "on one condition." Gino raised an eyebrow. "You said they got in with a manifest. You said Raven Maritime is at berth 7. That is the scene. I want to check it. But I do not want your in-house technicians. I do not want your security team. They are all your people, which means, right now, they are all suspects. I go with my own team." "Your own team?" Gino asked, amused. "You just arrived in this city." "Slate," Eva said. "I'll take him. He works for you. But he's not on your IT grid, and he's not an idiot. He's the only other person in that diner who knew what was happening. Him and me. That's the team. We check the scene. No one else knows until we're done." A slow, genuine smile spread across Gino's face. He respected the move. He respected the analysis. He extended his hand. 72 hours. You have my eyes, Miss Mirek, and you have Slate." Eva took his hand. The grip was firm, dry, and surprisingly rough. She felt the distinct, cross-hatched calluses on his palm and at the base of his fingers. This was not the hand of a paper-pushing boss. This was the hand of a man who had, at some point in his life, hauled crates, pulled ropes, and done the actual, physical work of the port. He was not just a king, he had been a soldier. "I'll start at berth 7, she said, pulling her hand back. "Slate will arrange your access," Gino said, already turning back to his desk. The meeting concluded. Eva turned and walked to the door. As she pulled it open, she felt a gaze on her from the side. She glanced over. On a steel mesh balcony 1 level down, a woman was standing, holding a tablet. She was sharp, dressed in a perfectly tailored legal suit, her dark hair pulled back. She was watching Eva's exit. As their eyes met, the woman's lips curved, not in a smile, but in a small, self-satisfied arc, as if she was holding a secret that Eva was not yet clever enough to know. Eva stepped out of the office, and the heavy door clicked shut behind her, sealing the silence. The wind at Port Azur in the afternoon was not a breeze, it was a force. It shoved and howled, carrying the stinging smell of salt, ozone, and the metallic tang of rust. Berth 7 was a graveyard of old equipment, the winches silent, the air thick with the sulphurous, heavy machine oil smell Eva had identified. It was a cold, desolate place, forgotten by the port's modern logistics. Slate moved with a quiet, economical grace, his silver hair unruffled by the gale. He had provided Eva with a small forensics kit from the trunk of his car, a professional kit, not a hobbyist's. He watched her, not with suspicion, but with the quiet appraisal of a master craftsman watching a potential equal. Eva bypassed the obvious. She did not go to the security shack first. She walked the perimeter, her eyes scanning the ground, the fence line, the junction boxes. She was looking for what was out of place. "Here," she said, pointing not at the shack, but at a cluster of pilings near the water. Tucked behind a rusted cleat, almost invisible against the dark, wet wood, was a small, black zip tie. Slate bent down to look. "Meridian," he said, his voice a low growl. He did not touch it. "The heavy-duty, UV-resistant type. They are the only ones who use them." "Meridian Dockside Security," Eva said, her mind clicking. "Gino's primary security contractor, but not for this berth. Raven Maritime was supposed to handle their own." "They are not supposed to be here," Slate confirmed. "They protect the main gates in berth 1 through 4, not this one." "So a Meridian guard was here, in a Raven Maritime-controlled zone," Eva murmured, bagging the zip tie. "1 point for the inside job theory." They moved to the security shack, a small, corrugated metal box. The door was unlocked, as expected. The logbook was open on the desk. Slate checked the entries while Eva examined the small, dated terminal that controlled the gate. "Here's the manifest," Slate said, pointing. "The one they used, cleared for emergency winch parts, approved by a floor manager at 4 p.m. "Show me," Eva said. She did not look at the screen. She looked at the card reader slot. Tucked just inside the lip of the plastic housing was the temporary access card itself. Left behind, a mistake. Or meant to look like one. She plucked it out with tweezers. "Keegan Holt, Tech Team," she read. "I know Keegan," Slate said, his face tightening. "Good kid. Works in IT. No way he's part of this." "Maybe," Eva said. "And maybe he just lost his card." She pulled a small digital camera from the kit and began taking high-resolution photos of the card. She focused on the barcode. This wasn't lost. It was faked. She zoomed in on the image. "Look at the barcode. The lines are not printed. They are a sticker, an overlay, a good one, but not perfect." She pointed to the edge. "The alignment is off, by maybe 0.5 millimeter. But look how it's off. The kerning on the text, Keegan Holt, is perfect. The alignment of the barcode itself is centered relative to the text, but not to the card's magnetic strip." Slate frowned. "What does that mean?" "It means," Eva said, "this was not made by a dock worker with a label maker. This was made by a graphic designer, someone who obsesses over text alignment but would not think to check the specs of the magstripe printer. This was made by someone in-house, in an office, who wanted it to look right visually." She moved to the security monitor, which showed 4 camera angles, all of them static. The west angle camera, the one pointed at the gate. She said. Slate tapped the keyboard, pulling the archives from the time of the manifest entry. The camera feed played. The gate opened. A dark van drove through. It all looked normal. Wait, Ava said. Play it again and show me the live feed. Slate switched. The live feed showed the gate and the corner of the adjacent warehouse. The archived feed showed the gate, but not the warehouse corner. Eva pulled out a protractor from the kit. She measured the angle on the screen. It's off by 7 degrees. 7 degrees. It's been tilted deliberately, Eva said, her mind racing. Not enough for a maintenance alert, not enough for a casual guard to notice, but just enough to create a perfect blind spot in the secondary coverage area, right where that van passed. This was not a lucky break. Slate. This was a planned, coordinated failure. They had the card, they had the manifest, and they had control of the camera. She looked around the tiny, dusty room. It was all too neat. The zip tie, the card left behind, the obvious camera tilt. It's staged, she said. They are giving us Raven Maritime on a plate, but they are also giving us Meridian and an in-house designer. Her eyes fell on the system's backup drive, a ridiculously old magnetic tape unit. A tape was visibly jammed in the drive, spilling out like black ribbon. And that, she said, pointing, is the final touch, a jammed tape. The backup failed. It's supposed to look like an incompetent operator or a system failure, but it's just noise. They want us to find this. They are mixing signals, pointing in 3 directions at once. She knelt at the threshold of the shack, her fingers brushing the rough, anti-slip coating on the metal step. She took a small spatula and scraped a sample into a bag. What is that grip tape? Slate asked. Anti-slip powder, Eva said, holding the bag up to the light. But it's not the port-grade stuff. That's sand and carbide. This is fine-grained silica, mixed with granulated rubber. You see this in specialized environments. Like what? Like the flooring of a dojo, a high-end martial arts gym, Eva said, standing up. A memory sparked a poster she had seen in a coffee shop. The Gray Spur Gym, the one that sponsors the police grappling tournaments, the one Gino's own security detail uses for training. Now they had 4 threads, Raven, Meridian, an in-house designer, and Gino's own bodyguards. Slate's hand went to his phone. He started typing a text, his brow furrowed in anger. Eva put her hand on his arm, stopping him. Her touch was light, but his fingers froze. Don't, she said, her voice low. He needs to know, Slate growled. He needs to know his people are compromised. He knows. He's just waiting for the name. Eva said, if you send that text, you alert the one person who is watching for it, the real one, the one who's smart enough to mix all these signals. They will pivot. They will burn Keegan or the Meridian Guard, and they will vanish. We stay quiet until we have the whole picture. Slate looked at her, his eyes assessing. He slowly, reluctantly, put the phone back in his pocket. As he did, a high-pitched whine cut through the wind. Eva heard it first. She looked up. Hanging in the air, about 200 feet above them, was a small, black civilian drone. It was hovering, its camera gimbal pointed directly at them. We're being watched, Slate said, reaching for his hip. Don't, Eva said. It'll just fly away, and we need to know who's flying it. She ran from the shack to the trunk of Slate's sedan. She had seen it when he opened it. A fishing rod, a heavy-duty surf casting setup, was strapped to the side. She grabbed it, pulled a small, weighted grappling hook from her own kit, and tied it to the line, her fingers moving with a speed that defied logic. The drone began to rise, its operator likely spooked. Too late, Eva whispered. She was not a fisherman, but her father had taught her how to cast a rescue line. She whipped the rod back, then forward, a powerful explosive movement from her core. The hook flew, the line singing out, a perfect high-speed arc. It sailed up, past the drone, and then she ripped the rod back. The hook caught. The drone's motor screamed as it was snagged, and Eva planted her feet, reeling hard. The drone fought, but the line held. It came crashing down onto the pier, a tangled mess of plastic and wires. Slate was on it in a second, pulling the micro SD card. He slotted it into a reader on his phone. The card was full of surveillance photos, pictures of Gino's car, pictures of his office, and then a series of high-resolution images taken through a restaurant window. It was Gino and the mayor, from last night, at the harbor and hearth. They were laughing, deep in conversation. And in the background, standing at the bar, pretending to wait for a drink, was the woman from the balcony, Maura Vicks, the lawyer. Her back was to the camera, but she was looking over Gino's shoulder, her expression unreadable, her phone held discreetly at her side. Eva looked at the screen, her mind a cold engine of calculation. She did not make a conclusion. She made a list. Raven Maritime, E, for the lost contract, Meridian Security, for the zip tie, an internal graphic designer, for the forged card, the gray spur gym, for the rubber dust, and Maura Vicks, for being where she had no reason to be, watching her own boss. This isn't a simple hit, Eva said, looking at the gray, churning sky. This is a web, and we're not the spiders. We're the flies. It was almost 9 at night when Slate led Eva back to the top floor. The atrium was dark, the dozens of workstations below powered down, silent and skeletal. But Gino Belafonte's office was lit, not by lamps, but by the cold, million-point light of Port Azure, which flooded in through the glass wall. The city itself was a spectator. Gino was standing in the darkness, a silhouette against the view, his back to the room. A glass of whiskey sat untouched on his desk. "Slate, wait in the car. I'll take Miss Mirek home myself," Gino said, his voice quiet but carrying in the vast, still room. Slate gave Eva a single, unreadable glance and was gone. The door clicked shut, leaving them in the near dark. "Your report," Gino said, still not turning. Eva did not need light. She stood in the center of the room, her voice clear and precise, like a medical examiner dictating an autopsy. It's a setup, but it's a complicated one. You have 4 conflicting threads. First, Raven Maritime. The motive is public. The lost contract. The clue is the winch oil. It is too obvious. A trail of breadcrumbs. She took a breath. Second, Meridian Security. The zip tie at berth 7 belongs to them. They're not supposed to be there. That points to your own contracted security. Third, your internal technical services. The access card for Keegan Holt was a high-end forgery. The alignment error suggests a graphic designer, not a forger. Someone in your office, not on the docks. Fourth, she said, the gray spur gym. The anti-slip powder is from their mats, and your own security detail trains there. Gino finally turned. His face was in shadow, unreadable. "So, Raven, Meridian, my IT department, or my own bodyguards. You have given me everyone, Miss Mirek, which is no one." "That's the point," Eva said, now stepping forward, letting the city light catch her face. "Someone is painting with too many colors. They're mixing the signals, overlapping jurisdictions, creating a cloud of suspects so you'll be too busy looking left to see the knife coming from the right. This wasn't a professional hit. It was a piece of theater, designed to make you panic." "And am I panicking?" he asked, his voice soft. "You're about to," Eva said. Gino was silent. He picked up his whiskey, swirled it, but did not drink. He looked past her, at the city again. "This weekend, the Dockside Council votes. It is an association of port business leaders, some legitimate, some less so." "Half gray," Eva supplied. "Exactly. The vote is for the new container routes. The Ravello Syndicate wants them. They have wanted them for a decade. All they need is for me to look weak, for my partners to think I've lost control, an attack in a public diner, my security failing, rumors of an inside man. That is not just an attack. That is a corporate destabilization. They are not trying to kill me, Miss Mirek. They are trying to bankrupt me, to absorb me." He had just handed her the motive. Eva processed it, then walked directly to the heart of the matter. The plan was too precise. It used your procedures, the manifest, the card, the camera blind spot. This was not planned by the Ravello Syndicate. This was planned by someone who eats breakfast in your house. Do you have an enemy that close?" Gino's gaze drifted from the window to his desk, to a single, small, heavy silver frame. It held a picture of a smiling girl, maybe 12 years old, with bright eyes and a missing front tooth, her arms thrown around Gino's neck. He did not touch the photo, but his eyes softened for a fraction of a second. "In my life," he said, "strangers are predictable. It is the ones who get closest. They are the only ones who know where to strike, the only ones who can land a blow that deep." He turned back. "All business. I offered you 72 hours. This is larger than I thought. I want you to stay on, as a temporary consultant on the payroll." Eva shook her head, a sharp, definitive movement. "I'm not for hire. I am not switching sides. Mr. Belafonte, I am not one of your people, and I am not on your payroll." "You are not a waitress," he countered, a note of steel in his voice. "Not anymore." "I am a woman who wants to be left alone," Eva said, "but the people who tried to kill you are now. I suspect very interested in the woman who stopped them. You did not clear my blind spot. You created it." He conceded the point with a small nod. "Then we are stuck with each other. For 48 more hours. You are not my employee. You are my consultant. You will find the person who put that knife in their hand, and I will find a way to make you safe again." A sharp, polite knock echoed in the office. Before Gino could answer, the door opened. Maura Vick stood framed in the light of the outer hallway, a shark in a silk suit. "Gino, you are still here," she said, her voice a smooth, cultured purr. She glided into the room, her eyes landing on Eva, and her smile was a perfect red-lipped razor. "Ah, Miss Mirek, I was just reviewing the incident reports from the diner. You are a woman of surprising talents." She moved to stand near Gino, a subtle, proprietary gesture. "I am Maura Vicks. I am chief counsel for Belafonte Imports. Gino, you really should not be having these conversations without me." She turned her full, undivided attention to Eva. "Your actions at the diner, while commendable, have put you in a very precarious legal position. You are a civilian who engaged with armed assailants. You are a witness and a potential liability." She offered a smile. "I'm here to offer you my services, pro bono, naturally, to help you. Navigate the risk. To ensure your story is consistent, I will handle all the ramifications, should you choose to continue assisting Mr. Belafonte." The ambiguity was suffocating. The look she gave Gino was not that of a lawyer to a client. It was something far more complex, layered with history, possessiveness, and a hint of a shared dark past, contract or ex-lover Eva could not tell. It did not matter. Maura was a new and dangerous variable. "Thank you, Maura," Gino said, his voice flat, dismissing her. "But Miss Mirek is not in legal trouble. She's under my protection. That will be all." Maura's smile did not falter, but her eyes went cold. "Of course, Gino." She nodded at Eva, a little bow of false respect, and glided out, leaving a trail of expensive perfume. The silence she left was heavier. Slate re-entered, not waiting for a knock. He had heard. He walked past Gino and stopped in front of Eva, holding out a small, black pager, the kind doctors used to carry. "You are a civilian, but you are in the game," Slate said, his voice a low rumble. "You get into trouble you cannot talk or fight your way out of. You press this button 3 times. My team will be there in 2 minutes." Eva took the pager. It felt heavy, solid. 2 minutes, she said, a small, humorless smile touching her lips, "is an eternity. Slate." She pocketed it. "But I appreciate the gesture. I am faster than your team." Slate did not smile, but his eyes showed respect. He nodded once and left. They were alone again. The city lights seemed brighter, the darkness in the office deeper. A fine mist had begun to fall. Tracing the glass, they both moved toward the window, as if drawn by a single string, until they were standing side by side, looking out at the rain-slicked world. They were not touching, but Eva was acutely aware of him. She could feel the heat radiating from his shoulder, just an inch from hers. The air between them was static, charged, the space of a single held breath. He spoke first, his voice a murmur, directed at the glass. "Do not be alone tonight." It was not an order. It was not quite a plea. It was a statement, born of a shared understanding of the stakes. Eva kept her eyes on the lights of the harbor. "I have not been alone in my own head for 10 years. Mr. Belafonte." Her voice was just as quiet. "I am never alone." He turned his head, just slightly. She did not look back, but she could feel his gaze on her profile, as tangible as a touch. The air did not move, but it was electric. Nothing had happened, no one had moved, but the room was already on fire. The rented sedan was a boring, generic gray, which was exactly why Eva had chosen it. It was also why she spotted the tail immediately. 2 black, identical SUVs. They were not just following, they were professional, keeping a legal distance, using the evening traffic on the Seabright Bridge to mask their formation. One stayed 2 cars back, the other held pace in the adjacent lane. Eva's hands were steady on the wheel. They were trying to box her in, waiting for the long stretch of the bridge where there were no exits. She glanced in the rearview mirror. The lead SUV was growing impatient, creeping closer. She waited until she was halfway across the main span, the dark water churning hundreds of feet below. Then she acted. She did not brake check. That was for amateurs. She tapped her brakes just enough to flash the lights, then slammed the accelerator, shooting the car forward into a 20-foot gap. The SUV behind her, surprised, accelerated to catch up. Eva immediately, violently braked, this time for real. The sedan's anti-lock brakes screamed. The SUV behind her swerved, tires smoking, avoiding a rear-end collision by inches. In that half-second of chaos, Eva wrenched the wheel hard right. She drove the sedan over the curb, onto the narrow service lane, scraping the chassis with a sound like a tortured scream. She was clear. She sped along the empty lane for 300 yards, heading for the bridge's massive steel support structure. A spotlight hit her, blinding. The other SUV had crossed the median and was racing to cut her off. A window rolled down. The thump crack was not a gunshot. It was a beanbag round from a 12-gauge shotgun. It shattered her rear windshield, spraying safety glass, but the heavy, non-lethal round was meant to incapacitate, not kill. They wanted her alive. Eva did not bother with the door. She unbuckled, slammed the sedan into park, and vaulted out the driver's side window. She landed on her feet, her training taking over. She was on the bridge's pedestrian path. Below her, a maze of I-beams. She did not hesitate. She climbed the low railing, balanced for a microsecond against the wind, and dropped. She caught a crossbeam, her hands stinging, and flipped her body over it, a fluid, practiced gymnastic motion. She was in the superstructure, a dark world of steel and wind. Another beanbag round impacted the girder where she had just been, the sound a dull thwack. She moved through the beams like a ghost, her father's parkour lessons echoing in her memory. She dropped 10 feet to a catwalk, ran, and slid down an access ladder, emerging into the shadows of an industrial park at the foot of the bridge. She heard men shouting behind her. She sprinted into the first open door. She saw a dark, cavernous space. The air was sharp, dusty. The floor crunched, an old, defunct glass-blowing factory. 2 men, shadows in the doorway, entered, flashlights cutting the dark. Eva crouched behind a pile of wooden pallets. They were fanning out. She saw the glint of the beanbag shotgun. Her eyes scanned the floor. It was covered in cullet, the fine, powdered glass and broken bits that were the waste product of the factory. She grabbed 2 handfuls. "She's in here," one man yelled. As his flashlight beam passed her, Eva rose and threw the powder with all her strength, aiming for their faces. It was a cloud of microscopic razors. The men screamed, dropping their lights, their hands flying to their eyes. They were blinded, not permanently, but long enough. Eva did not run for the front door. She ran for the side exit, a steel fire door. She burst out into a back alley, gasping. and nearly collided with Slate's black sedan as it skidded to a stop. The passenger door was already open. "Your timing is improving," she said, tumbling into the seat. Slate did not reply, just stomped the gas, the car fishtailing on the wet pavement as they vanished into the night. The safe house was a converted attic above a closed boat repair shop. It smelled of old pine, varnish, and cedar. Unlike the cold steel and glass of Gino's office, this place was warm, lit by yellow, low-wattage lamps. A private doctor, a thin man with nervous eyes, was already there. He efficiently cleaned and butterfly bandaged a long, shallow graze on Eva's forearm where the beanbag shrapnel and glass had caught her. Slate stood guard at the bottom of the stairs. At 10 p.m., the door opened, and Gino Belafonte arrived, his coat dark with rain, his hair plastered to his head. He looked exhausted and furious. "Get out, man," he said to the doctor, who scrambled for his bag. "Both of you, wait downstairs." The doctor and Slate left, closing the heavy wooden door, plunging the attic into a thick, charged silence. Only the sound of the rain hammering the roof remained. Gino stood by the door, dripping on the floorboards. "This is my fault," he said, his voice a low rasp. "I put you in that office. I put a target on you. I pulled you into this." Eva stood up from the stool she had been sitting on, the antiseptic stinging her arm. "You think they're watching me because of you?" she asked, her voice tight. "I was not safe before. I was just invisible. I stepped into your office because standing outside was not an option for either of us. You did not put a target on me. You just lit it up." He walked toward her, his face a mask of self-recrimination and something else, something deeper. He stopped when they were so close their breathing merged in the small space. The air between them was pulled taut as a wire. Gino raised his hand, not to grab, but to ask. He used the back of his hand, his knuckles, to gently, slowly lift her chin. It was a gesture of profound respect. A question. He waited, his eyes searching hers, waiting for the consent she had never given anyone. She nodded, just once, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. The first kiss was not a collision. It was a landing. It was slow and deep, a search for solid ground. It tasted of the salt from the rain on his skin and the faint, chemical bite of the antiseptic on hers. His other hand came up, not to her waist, but to her back, his broad palm resting flat against her shoulder blade. It was a gesture of support, not possession, a way of saying, "I am here." Eva felt the rigid control in her own body finally begin to soften. Her own hands, which had been clenched at her sides, uncurled. She slid her fingers up his waistcoat, over his chest, and then cupped his jaw. She felt the muscle clench under her thumb. Then, as he deepened the kiss, she felt it soften, surrender. They moved, a slow, unconscious drift, until the back of her legs hit a long, upholstered chaise lounge. They sat, still connected, the kiss breaking and reforming, their breaths a shared, unsteady rhythm. Gino paused, pulling back just enough to look at her. He saw her wince as she shifted, her injured arm protesting. He stopped immediately, the guilt flooding his expression. "I hurt you," he whispered. Eva looked at him, at this powerful, dangerous man, and saw only the crack in his armor. She smiled, a small, tired but genuine smile. She took his hand, the one with the rough calluses, and pulled it from her arm. She placed it flat on her chest, over her rapidly beating heart, her own hand covering his, holding it there. "You are here," she said, answering the unasked question. "I am here." That broke the last of his restraint. He leaned in, but not for her mouth. He pressed his forehead to hers, his eyes closing, breathing her in. They held each other, wrapped in a long, quiet embrace. His kisses, when they came again, were warm, insistent but gentle. They found her temple, her shoulder, the sensitive skin of her neck, each touch a reassurance, a discovery. A quiet, broken whisper escaped him. Do not disappear." The warm yellow light of the attic enveloped them. It was a pocket of impossible peace, a single, stable point in a world that was trying to tear them apart. It was not the desperate grasping of lust. It was the deep, aching, human thirst for contact, for a moment of trust in a life defined by its absence. That night, under the sound of the storm, they slept in each other's arms on the narrow chaise, wrapped in a shared warmth, 2 soldiers calling a temporary truce. They did not cross the line. Morning came. Gray and cold. Gino was already awake, dressed, standing by the window. He was on the phone. "I want the independent team, the one she asked for, now." Eva was relacing her boots when a thin, white envelope slid under the door. Slate's heavy tread was on the stairs. He did not knock, just opened the door. "Mara Vix is here," he said, his face granite. "She has a summons." Eva looked at the envelope on the floor, then at the one Mara was holding as she swept into the room, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. "Miss Mirek," Mara said, her voice like ice, "this is a summons from the Interstate Integrity Bureau. They are demanding you surrender the weapon you used at the harbor and hearth." Eva took the summons. The paper was expensive. The letterhead was perfect, but her eyes went straight to the logo. "The font is wrong," Eva said, her voice flat. "The I in integrity is a standard serif. The official IIB logo, the one Gino uses on his internal site, is a custom-smithed sans serif. This is a fake." Mara's smile faltered for a single, fatal half-second. Eva dropped the paper and looked at Gino. "I'm going to the gray spur to follow the rubber dust." Gino nodded, his eyes on Mara. "Go, and I," he said, turning his full, cold attention to his lawyer. "I'm going to have a quiet word with the owner of Raven Maritime." They were separating. The truce was over. The war was on. The gray spur was all exposed brick, polished steel, and the smell of rubber and sweat. It was a high-end combat gym, a place where finance brokers and police sergeants came to spar. Eva, dressed in borrowed sweats, walked onto the main mat for a drop-in advanced sparring class. The head instructor, a massive, scarred man named Rhino, was her target. He was ex-Meridian security. They paired off for light contact, problem-solved drills. Eva, playing the part of the amateur, let him set the pace, and he was fast, technical. She stumbled in a grappling exchange, giving him her wrist. He took the bait, applying a standard rotational lock. Eva did not resist. Instead, she flowed with it, and in the instant his grip was tightest, she used his own momentum to hyperflex her own joint, slipping free, and in the same motion applied a counterlock, a brutal, small circle wrist break she had learned in a place this clean had never heard of. He yelped, a sharp, involuntary sound, and stumbled back, cradling his wrist. "Sorry," Eva said, all innocence. "You were too fast for me." But she had seen it. As he pulled his arm back, his sleeve rode up. There, on the inside of his forearm, was a deep, mottled, purple and green bruise, perfectly shaped. It was the exact, undeniable signature of the 2-finger pressure point lock she had applied to one of the men on the Seabright Bridge, the one who had gotten close before she used the cullet. This man, Gino's security trainer, had been one of her attackers. Someone was not just targeting Gino, they were studying Eva. She left the mat, her mind cold and clear. As she passed the reception desk, she saw a large framed poster on the wall, advertising an upcoming tournament, sponsored by the Ravello Foundation. It read, "Gino's primary enemy," and in the corner, a smaller line, "All network and tech support by Keegan Holt." Keegan, the in-house IT guy, his forged card, and now he was tied to a gym, funded by the Ravello Syndicate, where Gino's own men trained and moonlighted as kidnappers. Meanwhile, Gino was in a different kind of fight. He was in a steam-filled private room at a bathhouse, sitting across from the owner of Raven Maritime. The man was nervous, sweating but trying to play a hand. "Gino, this is unfortunate," the man said, wiping his face. "This violence, It's bad for everyone. Look, the vote is coming. You're looking weak. I can shore you up. I can get the independent haulers to vote with you. All I ask is consideration. Birth 3. It's nothing to you. To me, it's survival. Gino listened, his face impassive in the rising steam. He stood, wrapping a fresh towel. You think I'm weak, Gino said, his voice flat. So you're trying to poach my territory? Offering me my own votes as a gift? The answer is no. He left the man in the steam. When he got back to the car, Slate was grim. Bad news, boss. I was checking the quarterly filings, like you asked. Mara has filed for executive signatory power on the B contracts. She cited the emergency clause from the attack, claiming you were incapacitated. Gino felt the cold knot tighten in his stomach. It was a legal coup. If he was incapacitated, or, say, arrested, Maura Vix would control half of his legitimate assets. That evening, Eva and Slate, working from the data Eva had pulled at the gym, found the cheap, pay-by-the-week motel Keegan Holt used as a crash pad. The lock was simple. The room was empty, but a burner phone was plugged in behind the bed. They took it back to the safe house. Slate bypassed the simple lock, and Eva's blood ran cold. The phone contained a single, chilling file. It was a video, a deep fake. It was Gino, his face, his voice, his mannerisms, all rendered with terrifying, flawless precision. He was in what looked like the Harbor and Hearth, standing over a man, the city comptroller. Rylan Ames, the deep-fake Gino, raised a pistol and shot the man in the chest, execution style. At the bottom of the video file was a metadata tag, a scheduled release command. It was set to broadcast to a private list of news servers. Tonight, during the Light the Bay gala hosted by the Dockside Council, the door to the safe house opened. It was Maura Vix, alone. Don't look so surprised, she said, smoothing her skirt. I knew Slate put a tracker in my car. Gino, I let him. The deep fake. Maura, Gino said, his voice dangerously quiet, framing me for murder. Oh, grow up, Gino, Maura said, her arrogance a palpable force. You're still thinking like a thug. This is politics. Do I look like I work for the Ravellos? I don't care about their petty turf wars. Then who? Eva asked. The Port Redevelopment Committee, Maura said, as if it explained everything. Federal funding, Eva, a new, clean, legitimate port, billions in infrastructure, but the feds won't sign the check while this half-gray council of yours, she sneered at Gino, is still running the show. They need a reason to come in, to clean house. And a video of me murdering a city official is the reason, Gino said. It's the justification, Maura corrected him. You're removed. The council scatters. The feds invoke an emergency clause, and the committee, my real client, takes over. It's a clean, legal, corporate takeover. I'm just the one who has to get her hands dirty. With paperwork. Slate, who had been typing furiously on his laptop, suddenly looked up, his face ashen. Gino, the broadcast, the deep fake, it's not just going to the news. The primary upload path, it's being routed through the main server at Meridian Security's headquarters. Gino, Eva, and Maura all processed this at the same time. Maura's face, for the first time, showed a flicker of fear. Meridian, Maura said, that's not my plan. Of course it's not, Eva said, the final, terrible piece clicking into place. She was pacing, her energy filling the room. It's a triple threat, a three-pronged attack. She pointed at Maura. You are prong 1. The legal attack. Use the chaos to file for signatory power. If Gino is arrested, you seize the assets. She pointed at the burner phone. The Ravellos, Keegan, the gym, they are prong 2, the public attack, the deep fake. They smear Gino, get him arrested, and in the chaos, the Ravellos make their move. She looked at Gino. But the real snake is prong 3, Meridian Security, your own people. They have control of your systems. They are the ones who will ensure the deep fake broadcasts. They are the ones who planted the zip tie to frame Raven. They are the ones who put the gym trainer on the bridge to grab me. and they are the ones who let Mara think this was all her idea. They're all playing each other, Gino breathed, using my head as the chessboard. And the game is tonight, Eva said. They are all planning to make their move at the gala. She looked at Gino, a hard, bright light in her eyes. We cannot stop them, not all of them. So what do we do? Gino asked. We make them stop each other, Eva said. We set a trap. We leak a new story. Right now, we leak that you, Gino Belafonte, are not the target. You are the source. You are planning, at tonight's gala, to present your own evidence of massive port corruption, implicating the Ravello Syndicate, the Redevelopment Committee, and a private security firm. Gino saw it instantly. A slow, wolfish grin spread across his face. We force their hand. We make them all come to the gala. Not to set their trap, but to stop ours. We make them panic, Eva said, and we become the bait. The Light the Bay Gala was held in the grand ballroom of the Port Azur Imperial Hotel, a space of crystal chandeliers and 30-foot windows overlooking the water. The rumor Gino had leaked had worked perfectly. The room was not just full, it was tense, packed with every power player in the city, all there to see if Gino Belafonte would bleed out or go nuclear. But the real work had happened 4 hours earlier. Eva, in a black technician's uniform, had been given access to the AV room. She had not touched their system. Instead, she had bypassed it. She installed 3 parallel media players, completely independent, linked to a simple digital analog converter she had built in the safe house. This new system was wired to a dead man's switch. A small script she had written that was brilliantly simple. It would scan the outgoing video signal for a specific set of data packets, the deepfake's unique digital signature. The moment those packets were detected, the script would sever the primary feed and switch in a single frame to the live camera feed pointed at the podium, a reverse heist. They were not stealing something, they were planting the truth. Now, Eva was no longer a technician. She stood at the top of the grand staircase, her hand on Gino Belafonte's arm. He was immaculate in a custom-tailored tuxedo, the picture of old-world elegance. He looked at her, and his eyes, for a second, held an entire conversation of trust, of fear, of a shared, dangerous precipice. She was wearing a simple dark blue silk dress, loaned by one of Slate's associates. It was elegant, but more importantly, it was non-restrictive. She could run in it, she could fight in it. Slate was already inside, invisible, his team, men and women Eva had never seen, were disguised as waiters, busboys and security, their communication a silent series of nods and hand signals. As they descended the stairs, a Meridian security supervisor, a thick-necked man Eva recognized from the gray spur, stepped into their path. Mr. Belafonte, apologies. My team needs to do a final systems check on the AV equipment before your speech. Eva spoke before Gino could, her voice calm and polite. Of course, we were just checking it ourselves. She pulled a tablet from her small clutch. I am already logged into the network. You can run your diagnostics through my terminal. The man grunted, suspicious, but took the tablet. He did not know that Eva had just handed him a lie. The network he was logging into was a sandbox, a digital playpen. It looked like the hotel's AV system, but it was a perfect isolated copy, running on a server under Slate's control. Every command he typed, every file he searched for, was being logged. A precaution, Eva murmured to Gino. Before he could reply, a smooth voice cut in. Gino, you look wonderful. Mara Vix materialized, a vision in blood red. She, too, took Gino's arm, a possessive, familiar gesture. Placing herself between him and Eva, she turned to Eva, her smile bright and false. And you? The dress is a remarkable improvement. It is amazing what a little money can do for a person. Thank you, Mara, Eva said, smiling back with equal, false warmth. You always smell incredible. What is that sandalwood and, something sharp? Gardenia. Mara's smile tightened. Just an old favorite. She had no idea Eva had just cataloged her. A scent so strong was a tell. a way to track her in a crowd, a way to know if she had been in a room. Over Mara's shoulder, Eva saw a nervous, fidgeting figure slip into the main AV room. Keegan Holt, the IT guy, the one from the motel. "Gino, please, a moment," Eva said, ignoring Mara. She led him away, guiding him past the entrance to the AV room, her body momentarily blocking the view from the hallway. As they passed, she bent slightly, as if adjusting her shoe. Her hand, in a swift, invisible motion, brushed the carpet by the door jamb, releasing a tiny, almost invisible cloud of fine, ultraviolet reactive powder. Keegan Holt, when he walked out, would carry the trace on his heels, a trail-only Slate, with his modified UV spectrum flashlight, would be able to see. The gala began. Speeches were made. The mayor, looking pale, spoke of the city's bright future. Then Gino was introduced. Gino walked to the podium. He stood in silence for a moment, commanding the room. He looked at Eva. "There are times," he began, his voice amplified, "when a city must look at itself, when it must decide if it will live in the shadows or step into the light." On cue, the massive screens above his head, which were supposed to be showing a live feed of his face, flickered. For 1 second, the deep fake played. The room saw Gino Belafonte, not the one at the podium, but a different, colder Gino. They saw him raise a pistol. They saw him point it at City Comptroller Rylan Ames, who was sitting, white-faced, at the head table. A collective gasp sucked the air from the room. Click! The dead man's switch activated. The deep fake vanished. The screen snapped back to the live feed, showing the real Gino Belafonte, standing at the podium, his hands empty, a look of calm, controlled anger on his face. "As I was saying," Gino continued, not missing a beat, "the shadows." The crowd was on its feet, shouting, confused, looking from the screens to Gino to Rylan Ames. "IBB, nobody move." The main ballroom doors burst open. The fake IUB team, the ones from Mara's summons, stormed in, a dozen men in dark suits, holding up leather wallets with badges. "Gino Belafonte, you are under arrest for the attempted murder of a city official." The head agent was shouting, but Eva was not listening. She was looking, her brain, in 2 seconds, cross-referenced what she saw. The font on the badges was the same fake serif from Mara's summons. The margin on their ID cards was off-center by 3 millimeters. The batch numbers, they were all sequential. A real federal team never had sequential batch numbers. "Slate, now!" she yelled, her voice cutting through the noise. Slate, from his position by the service entrance, hit a single button on his phone. Every magnetic lock on the ballroom doors and the lobby doors beyond slammed shut. The guests were safe inside. The agents were trapped in the lobby, cut off. "What is this?" the fake agent yelled, rattling the locked glass door. "It's a fire drill," Eva said, her heart hammering. A high-velocity crack and the sound of shattering glass from above. The massive crystal chandelier exploded, raining down glass, a sniper. Eva did not think. She moved. She grabbed Gino, shoving him off the podium, using her body as a shield, tackling him behind a thick, marble-clad support column. "Down!" she screamed. Another crack, the bullet, this one, hit the large, polished brass hotel sign on the wall behind the podium, exploding in a shower of sparks and metal fragments. "Slate!" Eva yelled, pressing Gino against the marble. "Rooftop across the bay. Northeast. I saw the flash in the reflection off the glass. He's on the water treatment plant." Slate was already on his comms, his voice a low, lethal growl. "Team 2, rooftop, northeast, water treatment plant, take him." Gino was breathing hard, his hand on her back, the adrenaline of the moment passing between them. The room was in chaos, the trap was sprung, but the game had just turned deadly. The attempted assassination had shattered the gala, the Dockside Council, a collection of men who operated in shades of gray, did not tolerate public, high-caliber gunfire at their parties. The event was immediately paused. Hotel security, now supplemented by Slate's men, began the calm. practiced evacuation of the terrified guests, ushering them to the lower-level lounges, citing a severe technical malfunction. In the chaos, Gino, Eva, and Slate had regrouped in the now empty, chandelier glass-strewn ballroom. Slate was on his comms, his voice a low, angry growl, coordinating the search for the sniper. Gino was straightening his tuxedo, his movements stiff with fury. "They miss! They show their entire hand, and they miss," he seethed. "I am going to the lobby. I am going to find Mara. I am going to find the head of Meridian, and I am going to end this." He started to walk. Eva stepped in front of him, blocking his path. "No," she said. "Get out of my way, Eva. The fight is here, and I am finishing it." "You are not finishing anything. You are a target," she said, her voice sharp, cutting through his anger. "You walk out that door. You are exactly what they want. A man out of control, a man who can be shot resisting arrest by another fake IEB team. You die. You lose." "I do not run," he growl whispered, his pride and his rage warring in his eyes. "Why, this is not running," she said, meeting his gaze, her own just as intense. "This is choosing the battlefield. You are alive. As long as you are alive, we get to change the rules. You die, they win." He stared at her, the words hanging in the air. He processed her logic, and then he processed the one single word she had used. "We," he asked, his voice suddenly quiet, all the anger draining away, replaced by a raw, vulnerable curiosity. "You said we." It was the first time she had ever aligned herself with him, not as a consultant, not as a temporary ally, but as a partner. Before she could answer, Slate's voice cut in. "Boss, Eva, problem." They followed him to the AV control room. The technicians had fled. Keegan Holt was gone. Slate pointed to his laptop, which was now patched into the hotel's network. "They are not done," Slate said. "The deepfake broadcast was cut, yes, but it was not the only feed. I am picking up a secondary, high-bandwidth microwave signal. It is coming from a transmitter on the roof of this hotel. It is still trying to push the deepfake file, not to the news, but to a private server, one registered to the Ravello Syndicate. They are not trying to frame you for the press anymore," Eva said, translating. "They are trying to sell the fake evidence to your enemies, to give them leverage, to prove you are compromised." "The roof," Gino said. "We go." The service stairs were cold and concrete, the air stale. When Gino pushed the heavy fire door open, the wind hit them like a physical blow. The hotel roof was a landscape of machinery, air conditioning units and satellite dishes, all slick with rain. The entire port of Port Azure was laid out before them, a glittering, electric web against the black. Churning water, the lights of the city flashed and pulsed like a nervous heartbeat. Gino walked to the edge, the wind whipping his tuxedo jacket. Eva followed, her silk dress clinging to her, the cold, salty air a shock to her system. They were alone, suspended between the sky and the city. Gino looked at her, his profile carved by the distant neon. "That night," he said, his voice almost lost in the wind, "in the safe house, I told you I was learning how to ask." He turned to face her fully, the chaos, the sniper, the deep fake. It all seemed to recede, leaving just this, a single, high-stakes moment of truth. "I'm a man who has taken what he wants for 30 years. Eva, it is the only way I knew how to survive," and he said, and the confession was rough, like gravel. You are teaching me how to ask for permission, so I am asking for the right to stand next to you, for the right to be the man you look for when you walk into a room, when you want me there, not as a boss, not as a protector, but as me." Eva looked at him, at this powerful, broken, and trying man. She saw the years of violence and loneliness, and she saw the man who had placed his hand over his own heart. She stepped forward, closing the last few inches. She rose on her toes, put her hands on his lapels, and kissed him. It was not the long, searching kiss from the safe house. It was short, hard, and definitive. It was a promise, and it was a warning. She pulled back, her eyes locked on his. "You can be there," she whispered, her voice fierce. "But you do not stand in front of me, and you do not ever cloud my vision. Do not try to protect me. Just be there, and be smart." A shadow of a smile, the first real one, touched his lips. Understood. "Good," she said, her focus snapping back. "Now let's find that transmitter." It was hidden behind a massive water tank, a military-grade microcell transmitter, hardwired into the hotel's main power. It was still humming, and as Eva got close, she smelled it, faint, but unmistakable. Sandalwood and gardenia. "Mara," she said, the name tasting like poison. "She was here." "But the trail—" Slate's voice came over the comms in her ear. He was in the service corridor below. "Eva, the UV powder trail from Keegan. It did not go to Mara's car. It did not leave the hotel. It went down. To the main power junction room, the one Meridian security controls." A new message beeped on Gino's phone. He read it, his face turning to stone. "Slate," Gino said into his own mic. "The Meridian shift lead, the one who let Keegan into the AV room. Owen Pike. He has vanished from the hotel." "I know, boss." Slate's voice was grim. "I just got his file. Pike. He is the former son-in-law of the chairman of the Port Redevelopment Committee, the one Mara works for." Gino was silent, processing the layers. So it was Mara. All of it. She was using Pike. "No," Eva said, thinking fast. "No. You are still not seeing the real director. Mara is the legal attack. Pike, Meridian. They are the systems attack, the physical plant. They are two different arms, but they are both being moved by the same brain, a brain that is not Mara and not Pike." Gino looked at her, confused. "Then who—" "The one who benefits from all of it," Eva said. "The one who arranged for Mara to get her clean port project, and for the Ravellos to get their deep fake evidence, and for Meridian to get control of the grid. Someone is playing everyone. Gino. And they are still in the shadows." She looked at the transmitter, then at Gino. The trap had failed to catch the king. "So," she said, a cold, hard plan forming in her mind. "We set a new one, right here, right now. We call a new meeting. We leak, right now, that you are on this roof, and you are cutting a final deal. You invite Mara, you invite the head of Raven Maritime, and you demand they bring Owen Pike. You force all the lieutenants into one place, and you see who comes with them to hold the leash." The wind on the hotel roof was not a breeze. It was a cold, wet, screaming hand that shoved and clawed, threatening to tear them from the gravel. It was past midnight. One by one, the players, forced by Gino's high-stakes bluff, arrived from the stairwell. The representative from Raven Maritime, his face a mask of fury, Mara Vix, her composure shattered, her expensive dress ruined by the rain. Owen Pike, the Meridian shift lead, pale and visibly trembling, flanked by two men who did not look like security. And finally, the man who pulled all the strings, the man who had been sitting at the head table the entire night. City Comptroller Rylan Ames. He stepped out onto the roof as if arriving at a garden party, his tuxedo immaculate, his silver hair unruffled. "Gino," Ames said, his voice calm, reasonable, easily cutting through the howl of the wind. "This is a remarkable display of theater, but it is over." He gestured to the two men who had arrived with Pike. "These, Gino, are real IIB agents, not the performers Mora hired for the lobby." Ames stepped forward, offering his solution. "Here is the deal. It is simple. You are finished. But if you agree, right now, to cede your controlling interests in Berth 3 and Berth 5 to the Redevelopment Committee, this investigation," he gestured to the agents, "will conclude that you were a victim of Ravello aggression, and you will be allowed to retire, quietly." Gino stood tall, his silhouette a dark cutout against the glittering city lights. "You used a sniper. You tried to frame me with a deep fake. You tried to ruin me. Rylan, why the dirty bullets? Why not just face me at the council vote?" Ames actually chuckled, a dry, cold, condescending sound. Because the public, Gino, is stupid. They do not understand leverage. They understand black hats and white hats. You are perfectly cast as the villain. He is right, Ava said, her voice sharp and clear, making both Ames and Gino turn. She stepped forward, holding the small, waterproof tablet Slate had given her. Black and white is so much easier. She turned the screen to Ames, the light illuminating his face. Here, she said, are the server logs from Meridian, showing Owen Pike's specific authorization codes used to bypass the security protocols. And here, she swiped, is the trace log from the UV powder we put on Keegan Holt, leading not to Mara's office, but to the Meridian power junction room, where Owen was waiting. She advanced on Ames, her voice rising with cold precision. You played this well. Rylan, you used Mara's ambition, her genuine belief in a clean port to handle the legal coup. You used the Ravello Syndicate's greed, funneling their anonymous payments for the deep fake. Payments that went into the Port Redevelopment Fund, a fund that your office controls. And you used your former son-in-law, Owen, to control the hardware, the security, the cameras, the transmitter. Mara was your legal arm. Owen was the hand on the switch. But you, Rylan, you were the brain. Ames's face had gone from amused to granite. Fascinating. A truly paranoid delusion. Agents, arrest Mr. Belafonte. He's clearly unstable and a threat. The two real IB agents stepped forward, their hands moving to their cuffs. But as they did, both of their phones buzzed, a high priority, encrypted alert. They stopped, pulling them out. They read for 3 seconds. Slate. He had just sent the entire package, the server logs, the bank transfers from Raven to the redevelopment fund, the audio from this rooftop, the deep fake file directly to the State Attorney General and the Port Azure Times. The agents looked up, their eyes no longer on Gino, but on Rylan Ames. Owen Pike saw the shift. He saw the game was over. He panicked. No, he screamed. I'm not going down for him. I am not. He ripped a pistol from the small of his back, his hand shaking, pointing it wildly. In the same instant, the Raven Maritime representative, seeing his chance in the chaos, pulled a long, thin knife from his sleeve and lunged, not at Ames, but at Gino. The rooftop exploded. Eva moved first. She did not go for the gun. She flowed toward Owen, grabbing his gun hand with both of hers, locking the wrist. She did not fight his strength. She spun, planting her foot, using her hip as a fulcrum, and twisted He flipped over her hip, his arm contorting. His shriek was lost in the wind as the pistol flew from his numb fingers. Eva did not catch it. She snapped her leg out in a perfect sidekick, sending the gun sliding across the wet gravel, where it stopped directly at Gino's feet. Gino did not look at the gun. The Raven rep was on him, the knife slashing for his throat. Gino met the attack, not with a block, but with a fluid, open palm parry, a move Eva had drilled him on just the night before. He deflected the knife hand, trapped the man's wrist, and twisted, sinking his weight. The knife clattered to the roof. It was the decisive, controlled, learned reflex of a man who was no longer just a brawler. You, Mara shrieked, backing away from Ames. You promised no one would be harmed. Ames, watching his entire world collapse, just sneered, adjusting his tie as the two IEB agents advanced on him. Harm Mara is just a cost of doing business. Mara stared at him, her face a mask of pure betrayal. She looked at Eva, who was helping Owen Pike to his feet, with a choked sob of rage and resignation. Mara ripped the master keycard from her own neck and threw it at Eva. The server room, it is all there. I choose a side. Better late than never. A blinding white light flooded the roof, drowning out the city. A helicopter. Not a police bird, but the heavy turbine whine of the state AG's transport, descended, its rotors beating the air. The IEB agents, knowing the score, did not hesitate. They grabbed Ames and the weeping Owen Pike. Rylan Ames, the lead agent shouted over the din, you are under arrest for public corruption. conspiracy to commit murder and wire fraud. The wind seemed to die, the helicopter's roar fading as it secured the prisoners. Slate's team emerged from the stairwell to clean up the mess. Gino and Eva were left alone by the railing, overlooking the port, which was now graying with the first hint of dawn. He looked at his hands, the ones that had just disarmed a man without breaking him. "It was not a performance," he said, his voice raw. "What I said to you. I have loved you from the moment you threw that knife, not because you saved my life, because you were the first person in 30 years who made me want to live a better one." Eva leaned her head against his shoulder, the exhaustion of the last 3 days hitting her like a physical weight. She felt the solid, steady beat of his heart under her ear. She smiled, a small, tired, but real smile. "And I think," she whispered, "I loved you from the moment you learned to ask, 'Are you okay?' before you asked, 'What is next?'" He turned, gathering her in his arms, his face in her hair. They held each other, and then he kissed her. A long, warm, and deeply sincere kiss, 1,000 feet above the sleeping city. It was not a kiss of passion, but of promise. It was not fire. It was home. In the aftermath, the Dockside Council canceled the vote and opened a full internal investigation. Meridian security was dissolved. The harbor and hearth, damaged in the first attack, was renovated by Gino, not as a diner, but as a community self-defense and resource center. With Eva leading the training, Maura Vicks, in exchange for her testimony, became the state's star witness. Slate, with Eva as his new director of strategy, rebuilt Gino's security from the ground up. Raven Maritime, its dark money exposed, retreated into bankruptcy. Weeks later, a cold night, Gino and Eva were walking the Seabright Bridge, the mist so thick it left salt on their hair. "A clean life," Gino said, looking at the dark water, "is much harder than a dirty war." Eva just slipped her cold hand into his, and he held it. They reached the end of the bridge, the lights of their new life in front of them. He stopped and looked at her. "Home?" he asked. Eva nodded. "Home." Thank you so much for listening to this story. We would love to know where in the world you are tuning in from. Please let us know in the comments below so we can all connect and share our thoughts. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe to our channel, Mafia Boss Stories, and give this video a like. And one more thing, please support us by hitting that hype button so this story can be heard by even more people.